now it's time for the Lady of the Hour, Priscilla Oliveras. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
I realized I said hello and then I'm like, wait, I think I'm muted. Hi, everyone.
Hi, how is it going?
Good. I'm kind of relating here. Someone, Samantha said, it's hard to feel like fall when it's still 100 degrees out. It's not 100 degrees, but our humidity is terrible. Like you look outside and I think, oh, it's overcast. Maybe it's going to be cooler. And then you step outside and no, it's still just as humid. I'm in north central Florida. So in Gainesville, Florida, a couple of hours north of Orlando. So we have still heavy humidity, and the same way as what Sarah said, not much color of the leaves here either, unfortunately. So I have my daughters are older. They live, well, two of them are up north, like New York, Philly area. So I get to see their leaves changing if they send me pictures or if they FaceTime. That's about it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully when you can go out and travel again, you'll get to go in person and see the leaves change.
Yes. I'm hoping for Thanksgiving. I haven't seen my girls since we were together in the end of February for my firstborn, my oldest, for her birthday up in DC. But this has been the longest in my girl's life that I haven't hugged them, we thank goodness for technology for, things like this and, FaceTiming. My dad turned 75 in July. So we had a Zoom karaoke party and
fun.
It was lots of fun. My oldest again was super organized. She was like, I'll take it over. And so she sent everybody a how-to list ahead of time. So everybody had picked on YouTube their songs. They were able to screen share but so those have been wonderful blessings, but I miss, and my parents and I live together. So at least I get to see them, and we're all pretty much staying home unless necessary because of their age and pre-existing conditions. But I miss hugging my girls. So I'm hoping if I go Thanksgiving, then I'm going to go on my own. My parents will stay. And when I come back, I'm just going to isolate from them for several days until I can get a test and then, then make sure. But I think that's been the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Amongst a lot of things, we're blessed that I have not lost an immediate family member like others have, but the lack of contact with family has been really hard.
Yeah. Do you find it hard to write? Has it been challenging for you to write right now?
Yes. Usually I don't have a problem. Typically, I'm not going to say all the time, but for the most part, I'll listen to music when I'm writing. I have a Pandora radio station. That's all that I created. It's a Luis Miguel. He's a Mexican singer, but sings a lot of romantic songs. Like even he'll sing a lot of old standards that my parents listened to when they were younger and dating. And so in that station, it'll play oldies, but also newer like love songs. And so I'll listen to that, especially when I'm writing like first draft. There's like actually Pandora has a Latinx or a Latin workout radio that plays a lot of my Zumba songs. So when I'm revising or page proofing or I'm just reading, I'll listen to that and take a lot of dance breaks actually. But usually I can put on my music and just fall into the story world and without a problem. But this year with everything going on, and I'll say that I've spoken with, in different author groups that I'm in that I'm close with. There are 9 of us. And one in the beginning, she was still, she's highly organized and she was still able to, just get her word count. We were all like blown away. And even now she's starting to it's going on so long. And for me, I just had a hard time shutting out the world. I would put on my music and, I think it was a combination. My middle daughter works at a hospital. And so that was, but 20 minutes in, I'd be like, I need to check something. I need to call somebody. Like I need to look at the news or I just could not shut it away.
Yeah.
So it was hard. It's been harder to focus. Deadlines make you need to, but it has not come as easily this year because I think just the stress of everything, worrying about family, friends, that is kind of, on the one hand, it's hard to tune it out. On the other hand, then we think of like amongst author friends and with readers, we talk about that's why I think our genre is so important. It allows it to escape. It allows for a happy ending. It allows that feel good that, a lot of us need right now.
Yeah, that's something that we've been doing these book clubs weekly since the pandemic started, since our shutdown in Dallas started back in March. And that's been one thing that's been reiterated over and over and over again, is how grateful we are for romance, but also for our comfort reads and the books that just like get us either back in the mood or that are like old friends. Have you found that you've been rereading a lot of books, or are you reading new books?
A combination. I've actually, like, new books that are released. I've also gotten to read a couple, like some debut books that, like to read for blurbs, that I'm excited about that are coming. I'll pull off from the keeper shelf, like one of Suzanne Brockman's Troubleshooter. My all-time book boyfriend is Cosmo Richter from Hot Target. So I'll pull Cosmo off the shelf and say, oh, like, don't have me dusting in the office where my keeper shelf books are, because half the time you're going to come back and I'm going to be sitting on the floor, with the dusting, with the Swiffer duster on the floor next to me. And I'm, like, I'm just touching base with Cosmo, just open up the book and dive into that story. But there have also been, this summer, there have been a lot of great books that have come out from, like Sonali Dev's book 2 and her Jane Austen series, Farrah Rashan's The Boyfriend Project, Alexis Daria's You Had Me at Hola, so there have been a lot of also new releases. I loved Emily Henry's Beach Read. I felt like the banter is so good, but yet she hits on some really important topics, some or deep, emotional themes. So I really enjoyed that. I listened to that one, and the narrator is really good. So I would say, okay, I'm just going to listen for like 20 minutes before bed, and like 2 hours later, I'm still listening. Or I would go for a 30-minute run and it would turn into a 40-minute because I'm like, oh wait, it's a good part, so that's a good sign.
That is a good sign. And it's good for your heart. You're like, I'm getting a lot of blood pumping by listening to this for an extra 15 minutes.
1 year during Lent, I would only I gave up like just pleasure reading. I don't know what the heck I was thinking, unless I was on the treadmill. So I walked a lot on the treadmill for those 40 days because if I was picking up a book that I wanted to read, I was like, well, okay, then I got to be walking on I got to be exercising then. So this was pre-Audible. Now I'm like, I could just listen.
Can listen to anything now. That's so funny.
Yeah.
So I know now, I do want to know what you were thinking, why you would give up pleasure reading.
I know. Yeah. Like chocolate would have been, well, it's probably still hard, but I think my thing was like, instead of reading time, like my own time, then like family time, or prayer time, or take that time and do and be present with, with others. So then I was on the treadmill.
Well, then you were very healthy again.
Yes.
I'm seeing a trend.
Yes.
They're very well connected. Well, so Priscilla, what's interesting is that you have had a very long journey and road to your romance career. And I'm very interested to know, like, because I know on your bio, it says that you've always been a writer, you've always been writing and just love romance. But I want to know, what was the romance that got you started? And I want to also hear about your dad's influence on
Pappy's influence. Yes. Oh wait, Sarah. I know. I don't know what Sarah says. She would kill others if she gave up reading. I don't know what I was thinking at all, other than maybe like I was also feeling like I needed to start exercising again, like for my health, and so that would get me to do that. Origin story. I mean, like a lot of writers, I was a reader first. So as a younger than it was like the Sweet Valley High and Victoria Holt Gothic novels that I remember. But my first adult romance was a Harlequin romance that my mom's a reader, but my dad is an avid reader, and he's an avid romance reader. He's an avid romance watcher. I had never seen a K-drama until the pandemic, and then needing something sweet, feel good. And I had some friends that are diehard K-drama fans. So they shared a list, and I fell into a K-drama hole, like a big K-drama hole. But I had seen snippets of K-dramas because Papi was watching K-dramas here. So he's a big romance fan. But sophomore year, we lived in Key West, hence Island Affair, and hurricane season. We were stuck in a hurricane shelter on base for several days. And so by day 2, sophomore, typical adolescent teen, was bored out of my mind. Obviously, this is like pre-cell phones or Wi-Fi, and who knows if we would even had it in the middle of the hurricane. So by day 2, I was climbing the walls, totally driving my parents crazy. And Papi, as part of his hurricane supplies, he had taken a bag full of Harlequin romance and presents, because he would go to the VA and he'd come back home and he'd have, I mean, one time he opened up the bed of his truck and there were like 4 boxes of books, and he had just gone to the VA for an appointment. He came home and he said, they were going to throw these away. Look at all these romance novels. So he just like had a roving bookstore that, and he could lend them out or whatever. But at the hurricane shelter, by day 2, Papi handed me his bag and he was like, pick a book and, you know, get out of our hair. And so I wish, I've had people ask me, what was that? What book was it? And I know it was a Harlequin romance, you know, but I don't remember the title. But that day in that hurricane shelter then was like a diehard romance, or that, you know, adult romance. So then I just started reading them, and then later decided, not that much later, it was in college. I got married young and my husband was military, and then we had a baby right away. So I was full-time college student and a young mom, and still a reader. And then the military decided to move us from Florida across to California, and I had to take a semester off of college because it was like a 2 weeks notice, like you got to be in California in 2 weeks. So I had to take fall semester off, and I wanted to be doing something like for myself, you know, like brain-wise, because I wasn't able to take classes. And so I did what a lot of readers like, well, I like to read them, so I'm just going to write one. Like, how hard can it be? Mistake number 1. So the very first time that I typed on my handy dandy electric typewriter, it was so long ago, I thought I was cool because I had a button that you could click and it would go backwards and like put the correcto tape on it.
Oh, super fancy.
Yes. So there was banging away on that, but I was 19 years old. I wasn't quite 20 yet. And it was 26 years later that I sold my first manuscript to Kensington. And I will say, it wasn't like I was pecking away for those 26 years, you know, 24/7. I had 2 more kids and I got 3 degrees and we moved multiple times and changed marital status. And, you know, so I was living a lot. Now I like to say, I think glass half full, that all that living and loving and hurting and, you know, experiencing hopefully will feed into my books. I wrote when I could around, you know, I kept thinking, well, my girls start school, and then I decided to homeschool. So there went that idea. I homeschooled when we were overseas, when they were in elementary school. I wrote when I could. I joined RWA and stayed as active as I could, made meetings when I could, and never let my membership drop, even if like months went by. And I think in part it was because there was a part of me that felt like if I cut that, then that was a dream or a goal that could conceivably, my life being so busy, you know, fade away. Yeah. And so I would keep going to meetings, and I would keep trying to learn more about craft and writing books. And that helped me to learn more about craft, about, you know, and kind of that stick to it. My first novel that finally sold was my thesis manuscript, that from Seton Hill University. Rosanna is a Seton Hill grad. She just graduated recently from the program. It was June, or in the June residency, right? So I graduated from Seton Hill in 2013, January. And so my thesis manuscript was the first book that I sold. And there were times before that, like the previous 3 manuscripts finaled in the RWA's Golden Heart contest for unpublished authors. And I would get a request, and then I would get a revising request. And ultimately well, that's not quite right. So people would say, oh, you're so close. So Close isn't a sold manuscript still. And then when self-publishing started booming, I had friends that kept saying, your books are good, why don't you?
Do it.
But for me, right, for, why don't you? And I think there's not a right or a wrong traditional small press self-pub. There's a right and a wrong for you as a writer. And it's knowing what's the right path for you, educating yourself and then making that decision. But for me, I had this years ago when my girls were younger. We walked into a bookstore and I would always go, even like the grocery store, we'd go by the book aisle. But in the bookstore, I would go to the romance section to look if any of my friends if their book was there that I hadn't bought yet, to buy their book or to visit with my friends. And one of my girls one time asked me, Mom, when are we going to come and see your book up there?
Oh.
So I had that dreams like that inside me that I didn't want to let go. And so it was important to me to keep trying traditional publishing. And when I signed with Kensington, right afterwards, I got a letter in the mail. I write with a lot of familia themes, like in Island Affair, you meet the Navajo familia. Book 2 is Ana Maria's story. My first series, the Match to Perfection series, it's the 3 Fernandez sisters, and Holiday Home Run, Julia is a Fernandez cousin that comes to Chicago. So I write with a lot of familia themes. My family's really important to me. And I got a letter in the mail from Steve Zacharias from Kensington Publishing, and the first line said, "Welcome to the Kensington family."
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what, all those close, but not quite. It's because it wasn't the right time for me. And I was now with the, at that point with the publisher that I needed to be with. And the week after my book came out, my youngest came home for a Gator football game, and we went to Books A Million, and we took a bunch of dorky pictures of us making silly faces, and she was making jazz hands at my book on the shelf. And that was like, that was something that was important to me. But so that's why for me, traditional publishing was the track that I still wanted to take. So I have a lot of friends that have done brilliantly with self-publishing. I think it's just deciding what's right for you. But it made those 26 years of waiting. Glass half empty, I'm like, damn girl, it took you forever. But glass half full, that it came when it was the right time for me.
Yeah, exactly. And then, landing with a publisher that is a family business, with Kensington, like it's just meant to be exactly what you said.
Yeah, I've been very pleased. I love the editors that I work with. I know it's all business, right? And so whenever, things can change. I've changed editors. The editor that bought me, Martin, left Kensington because he got an amazing job at Marvel, and he's a huge comic fan. So I couldn't be like, stay, right?
Yes.
How selfish. But now I work with Essie and Norma, and I love it. And if things change again, that's the business part of it. But I'm thankful to Kensington for finally giving me that chance and kind of ushering me into the published author world.
How was your reception and experience with having the Latinx vibes and themes within the stories, and like being one of the beginning ones that really ushered in this sort of own voices and the importance of own voices? And how has that experience been for you? How was the reception for you, and both like your fans, yourself, and even your publishers?
Sure. I'd say I know that I'm not, I think maybe like the wave of Latinx drama authors now that are popular, maybe there's a group of us that have really kind of in recent days, but back in, like the late 90s, Kensington had a line that was called the Encanto line, and they were all, it was only around for 2 years, but that was the first time that I saw like the both main characters were Latinx. And the Encanto line, it was a book Like it would be Island Affair here, and halfway through it was the book in English, and then you would flip it over,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like the cover, and it was en español y esta parte. I'm sorry, like this part, then it was the book in Spanish, so you got it in English and Spanish.
That's so cool.
That was those authors, Caridad Piñero and Laura Rios and Berta Platas, and there were several others that were authors in that line. I know that the books before the book that I started writing after I started reading Encanto, those first books were wrong for a lot of reasons. Mm-hmm. But part of what was missing from those early books was I was doing what I tell a lot of my students now is to, study the books on the shelf, see what you like, what works for you. And that's so the books that I was writing were mimicking those in the sense that there were no Latinx characters in those books, right? So there were no people that reflected me or my familia or, some of my friends. All of my friends are not Latinx. I have a wide variety, but reading the Encanto line kind of like flipped a switch that I think, like the next book that I wrote was one of my first Golden Heart finals. And I think in part it was recognizing that I needed to be true to the stories that were within me. And I can learn from the books that are out there, but then also write my stories. And so I think that to me, that is what is important about own voices and diverse, we need diverse romance. Like own voices means the author is of the same cultural heritage as like the characters. So the Match to Perfection books are own voices, and I'll hashtag those as own voices because the Fernandez sisters son Puertorriqueñas. They're like Puerto Rican. My mom's from Puerto Rico. My dad's Mexican-American from San Antonio. But Island Affair, the Keys to Love series is not own voices. The Navarro Familia are Cuban, and I'm not. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's Latinx rom, and we all fit under that umbrella. But that distinction of own voices is important to make. I think the whole movement, whether it's diverse, whether it's Latinx, whether it's Black, whether it's LGBTQ, whatever, disability, whatever the seasoned romance, whatever the other that people, I don't really like that word, is important. I know from my experience as a reader, how I felt when I saw those first Encanto books. I love it when I was at the Texas Book Festival and I had a young reader, like early 20s, and she was coming, that was Rosa's book, Her Perfect Affair had come out. And so they had Her Perfect Affair and His Perfect Partner. And she was buying Rosa's book because she said she already had the other one. But the first thing she said to me was, oh my gosh, this is the first book where I've seen like someone like me and my primas, her female cousins. And I was very thankful that it was my book, but it shouldn't be at this in this time that it shouldn't be that one book, or one of the 4 chicas on Facebook, there are 4 Latinx rom authors, Alexis Daria, Mia Sosa, Sabrina Soul, and me. Started like a Facebook group and have reached out to other, Latinx rom authors now. Last year we had a Latinx rom retreat with some of us. But Sabrina, a couple years ago after RWA, she took some of my books home and gave them to her mom because I write sweeter, sensual, but more sweeter, definitely closed door. Sabrina does not. And so she gave her mom my book, not her book, but her mom knows that she writes. And she said, Sabrina, so in our text thread, she was like, you're not going to believe what my mom texted me. And it's like, oh yeah, listen, this book has tiene Latinas, like it has, Latin girls like your book. Is she going to take your readers? Right. And so we joked about that. And she was like, no, Mom, there's plenty of readers. When you're done with Priscilla's, then you can read Mia's, then you can read, right. But that whole sentiment that there's, like a finite amount of time, or a finite number. No, because we all know as romance readers, how fast do we go through books? Do we listen to books? There's like plenty of, there are plenty of readers for all of our books. And I, as an author, I have to admit that what I write is not going to be everybody's cup of café con leche. right? Or a cup of tea, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's okay because there's another reader that will resonate, that does want, welcoming, sensual, familia themed, romances. And that's the beauty I feel of our romance. There's all the subgenres, there's all the heat levels, there's all the, there are all different facets. So, someone new to the romance genre, I tell them you're definitely going to find what you want to read here.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Well, Priscilla, we are actually at the 30-minute mark of our interview. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and transition to our Q&A from the readers. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I appreciate your time. We'll go ahead and end the record now.